What's up and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. Today we've got James Walsham on the show. James is a registered sports nutritionist and personal trainer. He has a Bachelor's of Health Science and a graduate diploma in sports and exercise, and he's the host of the Health Science Explained podcast. Big thanks to James for coming on our show. You can check out his website, thehypertrophyhub.com, or his Instagram at James_Walsham. We'll have both of those linked in the description below. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
James, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And I've been looking forward to this conversation because, like I told you before we started recording, this intersection is something that I've thought a lot about, and I think that it's really kind of where the rubber meets the road in terms of how change in the industry is being affected. So, not to kind of like leave this too much, but when I asked you the question, it's actually entirely unrelated to it. Not entirely, no. Definitely not exactly what we're going to be talking about today, but I wanted to first just discuss with you, body dysmorphia and how that manifests, and especially like natural bodybuilders and things like that. But you correctly reframed it as really a part of a larger aspect. It's just one aspect of the bigger problem within the industry. So just before we get started, James, do you mind giving me some background on who you are and why you do what you do, and then kind of like reframe this, what we're going to be talking about today, please?
Cool. So I would say I'm a registered sports nutritionist with Sports Nutrition Association. I'm also I would say I'm a personal trainer. I guess I would use that title. I think people often actually shy away from using that title, but I think we should take more pride in it and bring the name up rather than leave the name. Anyway,
no, let's talk. Can we talk about that for 1 second? Because I feel like this is going to happen a lot during this conversation. I'm sorry to cut you off right away, but because that is really a big part of it as well. Because I myself have had these conversations with people. They ask what we do, and I say I'm a personal trainer, and it almost has this kind of like, okay, what are you really going to do? What are you going to do when you grow up? So it has a little bit of that tinge to it, but I like coming at it from, let's make it elevate that instead of bring it down.
Yeah, and I'm not actually. I still don't know if elevating it is the right approach, because I think it's difficult, right? Because I think where the confusional issues come there is because the variability. Like, say with a doctor, you have a good doctor and a bad doctor. Generally, they've got actually the same level of education. And whether you can even classify them as good or bad, like most GPs are pretty good. Some of them are just burnt out and don't care. And I work with GPs in my main job. So I work as a health coach in a medical clinic. And I see good GPs and bad GPs. It's just how it is. And that's dependent based on whether they care or not. I feel as though within fitness or within personal training, I think a lot of it is more dependent on education, but I think there's probably more factors than that. For instance, someone can in New Zealand, you could do a 6-week course and now you're a personal trainer. And I think that generally happens across the world as well. And then I think most of these people do seek higher education, not in terms of needing a university degree or anything like that, but they do seek further education. But I think that, yeah, I can see why people disrespect the name of personal trainers. I can see why, because there's no referral pathways. There's not really registration like there is, but most personal trainers don't really comply. I think a lot of them do, but I think there's a lot of things where the rules are kind of broken. And yeah, let's say someone has mildly disordered eating. Does the personal trainer try and tackle that? I think sometimes yes. I think sometimes they might not spot it, but I don't think it's actually that common that people refer out. But I could be totally incorrect here, because that's just my experience and what I've seen. But I do think that that's one of the things holding personal training as a whole back, is people don't treat it the same as. So, for instance, I also did my undergraduate in podiatry, so I'm technically a podiatrist, not registered. But if I was registered and practicing, I would refer out often, because you pretty much have to. Let's say I have a type 2 diabetic who obviously needs more medication. I would refer them back to their GP, and I would talk to them about it. But as a personal trainer, we don't often refer out. And that's one of the reasons I got registered with SNA, or Sports Nutrition Association, because I was doing nutrition, but it wasn't really legal. So I kind of decided, well, if I'm gonna make this my business, this is gonna be my sole income, I would like to do everything legally. And it's, yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of SMA, so I don't want to advertise them too much, but I do think the fact that they provide registration and insurance changes it a little bit, because I think a lot of the time people will get and this is again more tangential, but it's like, if you want to improve your scope of practice, I think all of it really comes down to not what are the boundaries of your scope of practice, and do you respect that or not? And that's the thing for me that I think is one of the cruxes of people trying to deal with complex problems that arise in their clients. And I think people often try and solve them all themselves. But I think in reality, there's a if you create a wide network, then you probably will get more referrals from those people, ideally, if you build good relationships with them and let them know who they can refer to you, and they trust you. But also, if you run into a problem like an injury, cool, that goes to my physiotherapist. Eating disorder, cool, straight to the dietitian or psychologist. And that works really, really well.
Yeah, you mentioned the education component, and of course, like we can get into like the education prepping you for what you then go through with your environment and who you're professionally around in the beginning of your career. But you mentioned something that again, I think it's kind of like where this you said crux a few times. Like this is kind of where it comes down to, like having an understanding of that scope of practice. Do you think that sometimes fitness professionals just don't understand that something is outside of their scope? Or is it perhaps, I've seen it also where it's a competitive mindset. We have a scarcity mindset, and then that then extends to other professionals. But also then, like, are we worried? Is it an ego thing? Are we worried that we're then going to look like we are insufficient because we are then, sending our clients out to somebody else? So can you just think about that just a little bit? Like, there's obviously many factors that go into it, though.
Yeah, no, I think there's as you said, like there is a lot of factors. I definitely think scarcity mindset is present. For instance, I've seen the very opposite end of it. Working as a health coach, I have too many patients in my clinic. I cannot get enough patients. But as a health coach working in primary care in New Zealand, it's a free service. So GPs are going to send me every single diabetic they have. But working as a sports nutritionist or a personal trainer, I have to fight tooth and nail for my clients. That's, I think, how people generally see it. But it's I really think the fact is people they get in this sort of isolated space where they don't have other practitioners on their team. And I think a lot of us are working, like I'm actually, for the first time ever, I'm looking to join a team of other practitioners as a online personal trainer, but just because I think there's benefits to being on a team that I think people don't acknowledge. I think it's very easy to idolize the online personal trainer life, and like, you go do your coaching on a beach and that's all fun. But at the end of the day, like, who do you have to bounce ideas off? And maybe it's friends and colleagues, but you don't have financial incentives to get better together.
Mm-hmm.
I think I missed an aspect of your question. Did I?
Oh, we're going to be all over the place, so I think we might come back to it eventually. But you mentioned the online, the lavish, the wealthy, online personal trainer living on the beach, driving for hours and things like that. And I think that it really comes down to like what are you doing it for? Like, what are you in the industry for? If you're in it to just make money, perhaps that is more appealing to you. But then also that's another aspect of our is that there are the intentions of professionals in the space. Like, what are you doing it for? You're very client centered. Are you there to help people? Or are you there to make money? Because there's that intersection right now. I don't know if it's just culturally or if it's going to be ingrained in the industry long term, which hopefully that's not the case. Otherwise, we would have this conversation. But there are, I mean, like you mentioned, Sports Nutrition Association. There are a lot of organizations, for instance, level, like we're trying to help raise that standard as well by creating a different incentive structure. So there are a lot of different people attacking this from a lot of different angles, but it still feels like sometimes you're swinging in the dark because we're dealing with, man, it really comes down to, we're dealing with human behavior. We're dealing with, people manipulating human behavior. So I don't really think there is a thing that's more complex at all.
Yeah. And I think people shouldn't, I don't think practitioners should be ashamed of trying to earn money either, though. Like, I think, you're definitely not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I think people, yeah, like, for example, my girlfriend's a nurse. Like, you don't choose to be a nurse if you want money. Like, that's not the profession you go for if money is your objective. partly the reason why I do online personal training is because it's lucrative. And I totally will not deny that. Like, if I wanted to help the maximum number of people, personal training is not it. As a health coach in primary care in New Zealand, the income is pretty bad, but I've probably seen like 1,000 people in the last year and probably helped over 100 lose weight. And that's been totally for free for them. And the impact factor for that is ginormous, because, you're seeing patients back to back to back. They don't pay a cent. So the impact you're having on low income populations, which, like, if you're trying to make the biggest difference possible, it's much bigger. But you can still, with personal training and online, being as, like, I talk about sports nutrition because that's what I primarily identify as. I would say you can still have a massive impact because the conversations are reaching different people. But I think, I think it's easy to feel like, oh, I shouldn't prioritize money as a personal trainer, but like, it's a hard industry. I feel like I'm sure you've probably identified that, and the reason you're running Level Health.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it was that Haley and I'd been a trainer for longer than her, but we just kept like complaining, honestly, about like, why are these accounts getting, thousands and thousands of likes and follows and everything like that? And why is the attention going towards people? It's almost like, the X that, is going to burn you, but you keep going back to this. Is what it seems like it is in the industry. It's a draw, it's an allure to these novel things, these exciting things, and not to what's actually going to have the ultimate impact or effect. And I like to think, I'm a little bit too mechanistic, but I like to think the net effects, like what are the net effects of your interaction with that personal trainer or that, fitness professional, nutritionist, what have you. It's, are you better for that experience, or are you not better for the experience? And part of that we can do as fitness professionals, I feel, is identify, okay, what are the characteristics of a positive experience? Are they better off, down the road? Are you teaching them things that they can then implement in their daily life? Are you, absolutely an authoritative approach? Are you going to help, foster self-efficacy? And, even if it just means you give them a little bit of a boost so they're better off, years and years and years down the road, that still counts to me. And I think that's, again, kind of where this gets a little bit of a gray area, because how do we quantify that? How do we quantify what a good coach is? And that's kind of what we've been doing, is trying to help identify that by asking people much smarter than us, of course, to help identify characteristics, through communication skills, identifying pathological risk factors, even for as far as like weight stigma, because these all have an impact. And I think that it absolutely should be considered to some degree at the very front, like at the very beginning of an interaction with the consumer or a client. Like, how is this going to go?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's like, one thing I do want to say is, like, I think personal trainers are in a really, really hard position, and it's not, I think it's like kind of like the obesity epidemic, right? It's like, there's a part of it that is the person's responsibility, and it's the individual's responsibility to some degree, but like, there is a large environmental factor. And when it comes to personal trainers, it's like, for instance, I did my honors research on how much research there is on different practitioners helping people lose weight. And what we found was, in our search string, we basically found 4,000 total articles, screened out 99% of them because they didn't fit our criteria. And our criteria was basically, is it a study measuring practitioners helping people lose weight? I found one study of personal trainers, one of nutritionists. It was like 4 of exercise physiologists and 19 of dietitians. I'm trying to publish this at the moment in Sports Nutrition, but what it really, in the Journal of Sports Medicine, what I really saw from that was, like, dietitians, massive respect within research. Personal trainers, a little bit when it comes to prescribing exercise, but not as a they don't have respect for achieving an outcome like weight loss, which really is their primary target market, whether we like to acknowledge that or not. It's like, we can talk about how exercise, personal trainers are exercise specialists and things like that, and I guess that's what we are. But inherently, our vast majority of the time, like, I'm a pretty weight neutral practitioner, I like to think. So I don't really market myself as someone who helps people lose weight that often. So that's not my primary clientele. My primary clientele is, most of the time, historically, it's actually been quite highly educated recreational lifters. I would say that's my clientele. And I still get a massive amount of people wanting to lose weight. And even those people want to lose weight because everyone wants to be shredded. Everyone wants to be jacked, right? And it's like, if we're not as skilled as possible at helping people do that, and if we don't market ourselves as someone who is good at helping people do that in a safe manner, then I think it's very hard for us to improve as a profession, because that is our primary target market, whether we like it or not. Like, not many clients want to stay with you for 2 years to do an optimal bulk. Like, that's the dream client for a lot of people, but it's like that's not everyone, and I can understand why. Like, most of my clients, the situation usually goes where they're with me for, let's say, 9 months. 6 months of that could be cutting. 5 months of that could be cutting. And then the rest of it is like before and after, kind of setting them up to exist in a healthy way within fitness. Like that's probably my primary structure, and that works really well. But not many people, I don't think I've ever had anyone come to me and never want to pursue a fat loss phase during our coaching. Like I've maybe 1 or 2 people. Everyone wants to have some little, oh, can we do a mini cut? Can we, there's always some kind of weight loss phase involved. And that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of the reality of the profession. And that's the outcome people primarily want. And if we want to raise the standard, I think that has to come along with, we have to get the skills to do that. Like, I think you've spoken to Shannon Beer in the past.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he has pointed us down the right direction in this topic so many times. Like, really, it's like I look at her and as well as Dr. Fundero as kind of like bumpers, like on bowling alley. Like, we are just going and like we use and asking people to help us stay on that generally correct path. But she's been absolutely invaluable for that.
Yeah, same here. Like, she's totally changed my perspective on this. I don't think it was quite her that shifted my point of view on this, but it was on a lot of other stuff. But it's the, like, even down to the, is obesity the individual's fault? Like, that level of stuff, I used to think, yes, people are lazy, and like we simply can't move forward as a profession if we still have personal trainers thinking people are just lazy. That's why they're fat. Like, I think that thing has to change. Not that we should say, oh, it's totally outside of people's control, there's nothing they can do. But I think we need to get a little bit more compassionate around that as a profession. And I think honestly does come with education.
Yeah, absolutely. And other perspectives, because I mean, how many of us are just obsessed with fitness in the first place, and then we become a fitness professional and we're looking at these people that cannot lose weight, or they say they want to and they can't, and we're just like, okay, well, you just don't want it bad enough. And I was in a similar spot. I don't think I was ever fully want it bad enough, because if you want to lose weight, you're gonna lose, but it's kind of like weight loss is a massive minefield when you're working with people. And in the beginning, in our naivete as fitness professionals, in the beginning, we're just walking through it blindfolded without any disregard for like how we're impacting people. Because I mean, the way that we talk to somebody, I mean, for good or for bad, I've had people come back years later and say something that I don't even remember saying to them, and they're like, this pointed me down a good direction. And I'm sure I've said things that have pointed people down a bad direction, and I hope that I can help rectify that a little bit in the past. But I also think, man, this is such a big minefield, though, because like you said, everybody has some sort of weight loss desire to lose weight. And my dream client, and I've worked with more seniors lately, so I get more of these, is people that they really are they're just not interested in losing weight anymore. They want to get stronger, they want to get healthier, they want to have a social life. Weight loss would be okay, but it's not this overall driving factor. But in the beginning, I mean, like you said, more often than not, people are wanting to lose weight. And if you mentioned, you have somebody for a longer period of time, there's going to be a shorter cut phase in the middle, but they're going to be prep and maintenance phases on either side. That preparation phase is, I think, the scariest point looking back as a personal trainer, because that seems to be when you're going to lose them. That they should probably incorporate some good habits, maybe start including things instead of pulling things out. But that's the time they came to you. They want results. So you're like, let me just, trust me, just trust the process and everything like that. But it's just too easy to just, let's thrash them. Let's drop down to 800 calories. Let's get that weight going down. Let's get them bought into the process. But I think that, again, comes down to communication. Like, how do you communicate with that person and let them know, okay, you can, trust this process. Here's what we're going to do. How would you like for me to communicate with you? There's just a lot of back and forth that needs to happen that just really hasn't happened, including in my own, history as well.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is learning as a personal trainer. Like, I think,
Absolutely.
if I look at when I first started, it was really, really bad communication.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how, how you build buy-in and how that has to be maintained as well. Like, I feel like you can't just build
Yeah.
buy-in and then it's just done. Like, I've definitely had clients in the past where it's like, okay, they were really, really bought in for the first 3 months. And then I kind of got lazy and I didn't realize that I had to maintain that buy-in. And I think there's so many skills like that where, it's like that is quite a high level skill. Like, I don't think GPs have to develop that skill. There's a lot
Yeah.
of skills personal trainers have to develop that a lot of perceived higher level practitioners simply do not have to develop. Like a dietitian doesn't have to develop that skill. And if they're working with someone long term, basically like a nutritionist, then they might. But for the most part, like a dietitian in a hospital doesn't have to do it. A psychologist probably has to do it if they have long-term clients.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you don't have long-term clients, you don't have to develop long-term buy-in. You have to develop like initial buy-in. And I think that is a very, very difficult skill. And it is much different.
Yeah, and I think
we,
our Western medicine is where is that coming from, right? Because our GPs are they're the authority. They are the ones telling us what to do. We're supposed to follow them, and they can move on to the next one. And next thing you know, they've gone through 15 people in a day. But it's like, yeah, they don't have to have that buy-in. They are telling you what to do, and you're supposed to do it.
yeah, the buy-in is kind of assumed. It's like they've got
Yeah.
they're a doctor, so, and like I totally agree with that. Like, it makes a lot of sense them having that because someone needs to have it. But I think we need to be they need to. I think in experience working with GPs, for instance, I've had them discuss creatine with me in a way where they talk with more authority, where I can, like, no ego, but it's like I guarantee I know a lot more about creatine and the safety efficacy evidence around creatine. And it's like, it's something as simple as that where they assume more knowledge. But it's like, and they might know more in some senses about it, but I think we need more collaboration as practitioners. But I just think exercise and nutrition just doesn't have the respect that it deserves at the moment. And yeah, I think that's why organizations like yours, like the Sports Nutrition Association, like JPS Health and Fitness, where they are actually raising the standard of the industry as a whole. Those are essential. And I think, yeah, we need that, and then eventually that has to trickle down to regulation. I think there has to be more regulation and stricter standards, because it's like, what's the point in having like, if we think about how personal trainers get created, right? They might think about it as a career path, however they get into it. Then they get registered or educated or certified very, very quickly. And then most of them leave the profession within 12 months. So it's like, we got to think about why that happens. It's like the barrier to entry is really low. So they consider it like it's an easy path to an easy career, but they haven't considered everything that kind of comes along with it. So it's like, I think we raised the standard to make it like a year of studying to do it. And I think a lot of people would probably disagree with that, but I think it depends whether we care about raising the standard of the profession. Like, do we want to be able to charge more and justify charging more? Do we want people to respect us more? Do you want the possibility that a GP would actually refer to a personal trainer? Like, I just don't think that's ever happened in the history of the world. Like, maybe in some really niche circumstance where they know each other really well, but I just can't see them recommending personal trainers that often. And maybe they would, but I just think it's quite rare. And I think that kind of thing needs to be established for us to move forward. It's like, as I move back into, so I took a decent amount of time off trying to grow my business, and I was just kind of letting things sit there and just kind of making content quite casually while I was finishing my honors and working on some other stuff. And now as I move back into it and trying to grow my client list more, one of my main plans is to actually get referrals from other practitioners. So I'm going to go around to the other practitioners in my area and get them to know me and see if we can collaborate, see if there's some kind of room for collaboration there. So it's like, I want them to respect me as a practitioner as I respect them. And I think that's one of the key things that I think we need to build is respect as a profession. Like, we need to stop doing shit like I don't know if I can swear or not.
Or man, I'm all about it.
Like, I feel like things like when we respect the IFBB pro more than someone who actually is an ace coach, like respect their qualification or physique over their yeah, it's like we respect how they look more than how good of a coach they actually are. But it's like, if you really think about some of the best coaches in the world, they are not in perfect shape. Like, they don't look like athletes. I don't want
A
to give
little
an
bit
example.
heartbreaking when you realize that. It's a little bit
Hmm.
heartbreaking, but then you also realize that, I've realized this. It's not healthy to be as jacked as possible year
Hmm.
round. And honestly, if you're a fitness professional relying on that, like that really does say something right off the bat. Maybe not to all consumers, maybe too many consumers. I don't know what that percentage is. And certainly the
Hmm.
shirtless pics and the booty pics work for fitness
Hmm.
professionals. But again, that's just like a red flag for anybody that's thought 5 seconds about it.
Hmm.
Anybody that's done a little bit of introspection is going to notice that right away as a kind of red flag.
Hmm. Yeah, I used to be big on posting all that, and it's like, it just kind of doesn't get you anything except people being like, "Wow, you're jacked. How'd you get so jacked?" But they don't want to pay you for your expertise.
Exactly. Yeah, or and then it's usually guys, but yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily. I guess there certainly are people that build businesses off of it, right?
Hmm.
It's not to say
Yeah.
that it's not the same route, but again, that's the other thing. It's the same route that people that are focused on the money will be utilizing. And
Hmm.
again, you have to think about net effects, like what are the impacts of that on people. You've mentioned collaboration a few times, and I think that that's a big component of how we can actually take. I mean, of course, that kind of extends to referrals and everything like that, but also who are you surrounding yourself with? Are
Hmm.
there any other ways that you think that we can kind of become more like health professionals as fitness professionals and become part of that larger sphere?
Hmm. I think there needs to be a I think everyone needs that kind of referral network. Like, for example, I have go-to people for pretty much everything. It's like, if I want, so I see myself as a pretty generalized practitioner at this stage. I don't really specialize in anyone in particular. But if I have a client who, like, I have a go-to person for literally everything. It's like, if I have a client who I need to send to someone for bodybuilding, I know exactly who I'm sending them to. There's like 3 or 4 different people. I'll tell them all these people, and I'll be like, who do you want me to send you to? Same thing with powerlifting. For the most part, I'd probably send them to data-driven strength, because I just think they're the best. Literally think they're the best in the industry. But there's also people in New Zealand, like Jason Clark, I'd send them to. Like, there's heaps of different people that I would refer to for those 2 niches. And then if it's body image stuff, Mackenzie Baker or Shannon Bett. And it's like, every single problem that I can't solve, I know who to send them to. And I think that is simply, I think we're quite lucky nowadays, because
Oh yeah,
your referrals can be done through not done through Instagram, but you can learn who to refer to through Instagram.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, I think having recorded a podcast and being a podcaster like that gives you an advantage. I
yeah.
think, because then you kind of know everyone and they tell you about people, and you only get told about people who have a decent reputation, I think. And as long as you pick like good guests, like I've had influencers on my podcast, for example, like classic influencers, and obviously that doesn't lead to the same place. Um, but yeah, like, I think it really is about networking. It's like, inherently, I think it sucks that we have to make content. I think that inherently sucks.
Yeah.
As a profession, like, I think if it was more referrals based and more word of mouth based, and I think traditional personal training didn't have to do that. But
Mhm.
it's now that it's online, like, I think it really does change things. And like, I've been thinking about ditching online and going fully back to in person, just because you ditch a lot of the so to speak, like, BS. Like,
You drop a lot of plates that you have to keep spinning. Yeah, I mean, but I think we can definitely touch on this a little bit longer though, because I came to a little bit of a realization. It's obvious, but that the referral network doesn't even have to be somebody that you're going to work with. It could be like, who has expertise in this field that I can then defer ideas and people towards that. Because like, for instance, with Shannon Beer, like if I'm having somebody that's going to be having issues with weight loss and body image and everything like that, and all that, not all that that's tied into that, I'm going
mm,
to send them to somebody, and who knows, they may watch one of our videos or listen to one podcast, and there we go, or maybe they may end up going and actually working with them. It's kind of besides the point. Our network can, I mean, I've always thought that in the awesome this is the awesome part of social media. There's so many bad parts, but is that we can get mentored from people that we've never even met. We can listen to a podcast and jumpstart your career, leapfrog over what the growing pains that would have potentially taken you a decade to get through. So like there are so many tools at our disposal nowadays that I think considering how to utilize them in a productive and non-diminishing way is, I think, a very good idea, because I think we can spend so much time on like what is the latest song on our reel now that we got to use to go viral, but it's like that's going to change tomorrow. It's going to change tomorrow. So yeah, it would be awesome to be able to drop so much of that. And again, man, this seems like I'm just bringing it back to you on purpose, but that is something that we want to do eventually, is have Level be a hub for this connection between consumers and professionals, because it's not going to necessarily be a positive relationship or experience on social media.
This, I'm kind of flipping it around. Like, I think the idea is fantastic. And I'm super behind the idea. Do you ever get scared? And this is maybe too deep for your podcast. But it's like,
no, let's hear it. Let's hear it, man.
Do you ever get scared that it won't work?
Oh, dude. So the most important line that I've ever read in a book is from the Bhagavad Gita. It's you have a right to your labor, but not to the fruits of your labor. We don't give a shit. Like at the end of the day, like the only way that it'll be successful is if we have the effects that we want. Are we making the industry a better place? So it really does not matter to me. I mean, of course, we work day and night to get it to work, but at the end of the day, like if it doesn't work out, it's going to be, not necessarily out of our control, but it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. So yeah. But I mean, so we were fortunate enough to have Gabby respond to us, Dr. Fundero, pretty early on, because back in 2020, we were sending out emails, getting shot down left and right, really just because we didn't even know what we were doing yet. We had this idea, we want to bring it into existence, but we were so wrong. We just started taking swings. I like to say taking cuts because I play baseball, but we just started taking cuts, and we got to where we're at now. And like every time that someone has been like, well, that's stupid, you should change it this way and improve it this way, because we've sought that out. That's for same thing for fitness professionals, like seeking out that feedback from people that are outside of your immediate circle, because they're going to help you, nudge you in a little bit better of a direction. But that's all we've been doing as fitness professionals, but also with Level, is just trying to get nudged in a little bit better direction over time. But yeah, no, I mean, no, I sleep fantastic, man. I got nearly 8 hours every night. Like it's not a problem to me at all. It'd be great if it does. It'd be awesome. But I mean,
yeah, I'd be hyped if it worked. I think it's a great idea. Like, I think it's really, really cool. Because the industry needs it. Like, we do need it. Yeah, and I think going back to what you said about like having those, being able to leapfrog by those fantastic mentors, like I think that's 100% the case. Like, I feel like I've been given, like, I'm quite young, and I've been given just because I had the podcast, I think I've been given like a massive amount of steps up because of mentorship. Like, I've been privileged to have some of the best people in the industry be in my ear and telling me what to do and what not to do. And it's like, I don't think many people have had that opportunity, and I think we are lucky now that anyone can access it. But I do think, I think if you can do something valuable for these people or get in these people's ears, like that's one of the best things you can do. Like,
yeah, it's like a cheat code. I think it's like it is
honestly.
a leapfrog. I was wondering though, why do you think that you've been lucky enough? Have it been because you've not been afraid to ask? Have you just put yourself into where opportunities will present themselves to you? Be ready for it when it comes, or why do you think that is?
Honestly, I don't know. I think I think I'm very, very lucky in one sense. I think also I got into the podcasting game about 4.5 years ago. It wasn't that big. And also I wasn't afraid to ask. Like it kind of network effect. Like, I had Eric Helms on episode 65. Then I had, like, there's just a slew of, like, you think, name someone big in the industry, Mano Henselman, Mike Israel, etc. Like, they've all been on my podcast. So it's like, I've been lucky enough to have some association with them. And that, I think, was because I was quite early in the process. Like, I think I did the podcasting thing. I'm a little less aggressive with it now. Like, I do it mainly as a hobby now, and like a marketing tool primarily. Yeah. But like, I was a machine. Like, I was releasing like 2 episodes a week, like, and I was just crushing a niche. I would crush a niche at a time. Like, you want the best people in powerlifting? Cool. Nail that 1 week. Next week, best people in bodybuilding, then back to powerlifting. And it's like back and forth. So I think I was really, really lucky, and I was quite strategic. So it's like, primarily for me, honestly, it's through the podcast, and also location. Like, I live in Auckland, so Eric Helms was my university supervisor. So it's like I was very lucky to have him right, he's 20 minutes drive away. So it's like I've been really, really lucky on that, but also recognizing that I have utility. And if I create content that people listen to, then I can use that as leverage to have amazing mentors, like someone like Jacob Skepis. Like I've been incredibly lucky to have mentorship from someone like him, or Alex from Sports Nutrition Association. Like these kind of dudes have given me massive mentorship because I can offer them something. I think people often go to high level advanced practitioners who are either earning a lot of money or have a lot of reputation, and they ask, hey, can you mentor me? But that's never how it happens. Like you have to give them something, or you don't have to give them something like money, but it's like you have to, like, what are you bringing to the table? Like, are you giving unique insight? Are you interviewing them on your podcast, which is not like it's, my podcast wasn't huge, but it was reasonably sized, and I had a good network effect where the niche was quite concentrated. So it's like, yeah, I think that basically I offered them something and I was quite genuine about it. And I had this mentality of being a student in every sense of the word. It's like I wasn't coaching for a lot of this. So it's like I wasn't even trying to sell anything. So it's like for most of this period, I wasn't coaching. I was just existing in the niche. And I only started coaching around like episode 130 of my podcast, which is like, I think that's why it worked, because I wasn't selling anything. So they like, well, he's not getting anything out of it. He just literally wants to learn and talk.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, that the networking effect has been the most important component of the podcast. It's been great to get, when a podcast does well and you get lots of downloads and a lot of good feedback and everything like that. But like the conversations are the most important component of it. Like, yeah, it really is. I can't think of another space where you can get some of like the smartest people. I mean, I just had Eric Helms on the other day, like some of the people at the top of the field that are like willing to spend some time with you. But I think that you said that you have to give them something, and I'm not even sure that has to be like an outright, I'm sure you wouldn't say this, but an outright discussion about, quid pro pro here, like, what are you doing for me? But it just is, it's like, okay, well, are you doing something that aligns with their vision and where they want the industry to go? And I mean, so we've talked about like a little bit more meta stuff, but about like some skills that fitness professionals can utilize, or should be utilizing and potentially utilizing to help us be at the higher standard. Are there any tools that you utilize with clients and everything like that you may think will fit this category?
Well, I think there's probably things that I like to go back to the idea of treating ourselves like a health practitioner. It's like, what tools do health practitioners use that we should all be using? I think most of us take notes from our consults now, but I think if someone's not taking notes during or after or whatever, like they need notes on every single call you have, needs to have notes related to it. Like every single client I see at the medical center, I take very detailed notes because legally you have to. We should have the same thing for personal trainers. It's like every consult you have, there's got to be some kind of note. Like, what did you talk about? What was the outcome? And like, if you're not doing that, I reckon that's the first thing people should do. Because you can try and develop all these skills of motivational interviewing and all that, but it's like if you don't know what you talked about next time you talk, then you don't even know where to start off. Like maybe you have a great memory. I have a terrible memory. Like it's genuinely atrocious. So I have to write everything down. So I do. And then I never forget it because what did I write last time? So I would also say, yeah, number one is probably notes. Number two, you definitely need to be referring and build a network for that. It's not that easy, but like, if you refer to someone and try and make it a phone call if you can, try and make it some kind of voice message on Instagram if that's the best you got. But, don't send referrals through Instagram. That's unprofessional. Send them through email or ask them the best place to send a referral. You got to be professional about it. Treat other professionals with dignity and respect. Don't talk to them like they're a mate. Talk to them like another professional if you were working in a corporate job. In some sense, you don't have to say be super formal about it, but it's like, yeah, be professional.
As a personal trainer, I think a lot of times those opportunities for referrals just present themselves through discussion with your clients, because And also who you do you not want to refer get connect with, because that's going to happen just as much as the people that you'll probably no definitely more. I'm thinking like chiropractors, physical therapists, those kinds of people that are, it can be hit or miss just as it can be with fitness professionals.
Yeah.
So when they come and they're talking about the exercise that they had them do, or the way that they treated them, you can get an immediate sense separate from that, because you may reach out to a physical therapist and they'll put their best face forward. They're going to tell you, the things that they think you want to hear, and maybe they're a good person, maybe they're not. But I mean, the way that they actually treat their patients or their clients is going to, I think, tell just so much about them.
100%, yeah. And I think asking for recommendations is so crucial. Like, I think that's why that network, it does come a lot back to that network, where it's like, if I need a recommendation on something, I'll ask someone I trust, and if they don't have someone, then I'll ask someone else. And it's like, there's going to be someone who knows who the best guy is, like the best guy or gal for the job. Someone's going to know. And I think one of the most underrated skills is definitely, kind of, I guess you would say, motivational interviewing or skills like that. I know Shannon doesn't actually. I don't think she's my friends Shannon and Mackenzie Baker are not the biggest fans of motivational interviewing for an online setting, I believe. So I think they use something else. I can't remember what techniques they use, but it's like you need to get really, really good at asking questions that evoke that have a purpose. Like, you're not just trying to get the client to talk for 20 minutes. Like, what are they talking about, and what are they introspecting on? And how do you get them to come to their own conclusion? It's like in health coaching, we have this idea of ask, tell, ask. Before you tell someone something, you should ask them, one, do I have permission to ask you this? But can I get you to say the answer out loud? It's like, for example, like, why do you want to lose weight? And then see what they say to that. And then what question can you ask that cuts deeper after that? And I think that's probably one of the biggest skills, because inherently, if you want to be the most valuable practitioner you can be, you want to change people over the long term. Like, anyone can help someone lose it, like fat. Like, it's really not hard to get people to lose weight. It's not that hard. But to get people to sustain weight loss is incredibly difficult. And that means they have to, inherently, something about them has to change, or the environment has to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe your effect, maybe your purpose as a fitness professional in that situation may be to just make them realize that they really don't want to, and they don't need to hyper focus on the weight loss. It's not even to say that necessarily they're going to come to you and then you're going to help them lose weight, and then you've taught them the tools to never need to work with a fitness professional or someone ever again. They're good, they've learned how to lose weight, they're going to maintain it forever. It may just making them realize that there's a bigger picture. Like, maybe the weight loss was actually retracting from their health, it was subtracting from their social life, it was actually not serving them anymore. So that absolutely, I mean, the motivational interviewing can get so complex. And actually, after being kind of introduced to the concept from Gabby and Shannon, it makes you completely rethink about everything that you're saying. And then you could go a little bit too far and get too hyper focused on what you are saying to people. And there's definitely a middle ground. And some people may not meet it. Identifying, and that's something that comes up so often, is identifying where they're at in the change process. Are they ready to go, and they're all confident, and they need you to tell them what to do? Being able to identify that. But that comes down to the consult, right? That comes down to asking questions and making sure that you're evoking not the right responses, because there is no right responses, but the ones that are going to tell you the most.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think it's, if you can figure out when to ask those questions to get them to talk more, and when to just, you give, like, some of my clients, they don't want to sit there and have an introspective conversation. They want me to just say, cool, we're doing this week, go and do it. And like, that's pretty much it. Some of them just want to be the robot who does the thing.
And we like to think that those are the dream clients, but I'm not sure that they are. Yeah. I think that there's a lot more that goes into it from the human perspective to make it a fulfilling relationship for both of y'all, than to just tell them the things that to do and they go and do it.
I think the idea of like dream clients is I think it's silly in a sense, because I think people love to have that idea of like, oh man, I wish all my clients were like this. But it's like, nah, like, try and get the 50-year-old mom who has no time to lose weight. Like, that's a challenge. Like, I feel like wanting to be challenged is something that's quite important. And I think that's important for longevity of a profession. Like, yeah, when I was working with, like, my podcast at one point was very like, I was like one of the most classic like hypertrophy nerds. And like I still am in some sense because I love that shit, but it's like that led to a very specific clientele who wanted to optimize everything. And that was difficult at the start, but eventually that gets quite boring because okay, we're going to do this type of periodization and they want to know everything about the variables, and it's like that's when you're playing in such a small ballpark, you're leaving out everything else that's here. But it's like when you're aiming just here, so it's like I think most people don't actually want to just work with one type of clientele. Like I think that does get pretty damn boring. Like working with multiple different kinds of people is really fulfilling because you get to have those different experiences. Like I would hate to just work with people who play basketball. One, I don't like basketball, but two, like I think just working with specialized high level athletes, but even among them, like they're all going to be different as well. Like you take athletes at the top of their game, some are going to actually not be that disciplined. Some are going to be like a robot and they'll literally have done the work before you ask them to. So it's like, yeah.
You mentioned being a hypertrophy nerd. I think that I came from a very, very similar place, but now it's shifted towards more of an appreciation than an obsession, but also it's shifted towards how that applies to health and longevity and how to build muscle with the least amount of effort. Because again, there's another aspect of how fitness professionals can improve. We like to do everything. Like we want to throw everything in the kitchen sink, but like sometimes it's exciting to hear like that recent episode of Iron Culture about a minimum effective dose. I'm excited to hear that that's being talked about more and more because I want to know what the absolute least amount of shit that I can do is. What is going to give me the maximum effect from the least amount of effort? Because I know I did that 7 days a week, 2 a days most days. Like I've done, and I've seen that with other people as well. I mean, how many of those people you see, the old meathead in the gym that is just burned out, putting on wraps on every joint just to work out, just to train. And it's like, buddy. In fact, I always think back to, I was like 12 or 13. I just started lifting, obsessed with it. I was in there almost every day. And this old man at the gym, massive dude, very, very strong. He's told me he never got better gains than when he only trained. He went from 7 days a week to 3 days a week. And I thought, what is this old dude? Like, what does he know? Like, he knows nothing. But like, that was a little bit of a glimpse from the future because that's absolutely the case. Like, if we want to get into like periodization, I would love to do a podcast with you on that because that would be fun to talk about from all different perspectives. But I mean, it really doesn't have to be all that complicated, and it doesn't even have to be all that hard. Like you can make body composition changes, strength changes with very minimal effort. So I like that. That's kind of more towards the forefront of the conversation.
Yeah, it's really hard balancing it, right? Because it's then easy. Then I think it's a lot of people get shit on for that. Like like someone will then come to you and say, "Well, you just don't want to train hard," and it's like, I think we need to separate the bodybuilding and personal training / coaching culture. Like, I think we don't, bodybuilding needs to stop being the primary sport that personal training operates within, or like the lens through which we view, view progress. It's like people view it as just body composition change and like, yeah. And I like, for instance, the way I train right now is like, I literally go in 2 or 3 times a week, probably more often 2. And I train for maximum 45 minutes. And like, it's working pretty well. I just go and train hard. Like, that's pretty much it. And I'm not even training legs. I just go for a run. Like, because I can't be bothered and I just want to get better at running again. Because I neglected running because I just wanted to be as jacked as possible. So now I want to get back to my roots.
James, man, you're just speaking to me because I'm in that exact same place right now. I just dropped down. I mean, I want to talk about like my old programming approaches because like I've mentioned 2 days, like 7 days a week, just ridiculous. But I'm back. Yeah, I'm running as well. So 3 days a week, I'm running. 3 days a week, I'm lifting full body and I'm I'm enjoying the workouts and I'm not subtracting from my bank account. And we could talk about how that's like systemic fatigue and everything like that. But like at a certain point, like we have to figure out how to be smarter, work hard, or smarter, not harder. I think that's a big part of what fitness professionals can do. And I think, and we're just kind of stumbling on a lot of these ideas, but that's what hurts me the most is when fitness professionals make it harder for people than it needs to be. Like, that's not to say you're not going to have people that want to get trashed in the gym. There are going to be people that want that for sure. There'll be clients that want it, but like making it harder on, the 50-year-old mom, the single mom working multiple jobs, potentially, like making it harder on her. I feel like that's a damn near criminal for sure. I think. And also the way that you present yourself on social media or anything like that. like making people think that fitness has to be any more horrible than it is. It just seems like a big disservice to people.
100%. And I think I really love Mike Israetel's explanation of this, where it's like, you have the bodybuilder who trains really hard, but then the people who really train the hardest is like the hardest thing to do is to do like I don't agree on like a hypertrophy philosophy sense with all of, I love Mike and like everything he does, but I don't personally agree with everything he does in terms of programming. That's personal, like, but I think it works pretty damn well. Like you can't argue against that. So what he generally does, I think, is he increases volume over the mesocycle and decreases proximity to failure. And like at the end of that mesocycle, it's one of the most difficult things you can do. You've doubled your volume or you've increased it by a third, and you're now training way closer to failure. At the start, you were training 4 reps from failure, and it was still pretty damn hard. So it's like trying to do that is hard training. It's the discipline of not just slamming yourself on an exercise. Like anyone can take themselves to failure. Like once you like training, like you can take yourself to failure on 2 sets and then call it a day. Like, but can you take yourself to 2 RIR and then you're like, oh, I just want to go home, and then you just do another set to 2 RIR, and then you wait 3 minutes and you do another set to 2 RIR. Like that's hard. Like
it turns into more of a chess game at that point. But I mean, yeah, and then how long are you going to be at the gym? And that's another, like, that's just, there's so many considerations for how to effectively and beneficially program for people that don't have anything to do with the gym. Like they have to do with the lifestyle outside the gym. So again, it circles back to that, like considering that you're working with a human that has other aspirations and goals and responsibilities outside of the gym. And like again, this comes like full circle back to the very beginning. Like both of us beginning as fitness professionals, like that was just, I mean, I don't want to speak too hard for you, but like it was not even a consideration. Like I thought, okay, it's easy to get in here 6 days a week. You could surely get in here 3, 4, maybe, let's do some cardio, let's do something. But like, okay, but is this realistic for that person? Is my effect on this person as a fitness professional, is it going to be beneficial or not? And I think that really kind of comes down to like, that's the crux of it, I think.
Yeah. And I think the more I've I've kind of grown up in the fitness industry. Like when I first got into this whole thing, I was like 18, now I'm 24. And it's like, yeah, like as I became an adult and realized that you have to pay bills, like I realized that there's a lot of other things that people have to consider. And like, I didn't realize at the start, like now I realize that like, oh shit, like you do have to pay bills. And like, now that I have a job and like, I have to work and like, like you just, laundry has to be done. And it's like, you can just discipline yourself and get all these things done. But it's like, people have to unwind at some point and chill out. And it's like, the number one problem that I'm seeing at my health clinic that I work at is being a workaholic. Like that's the primary thing that I see is people are working too much. And it's like in those situations, like I have a guy who's he's literally working 90 hours a week, every week, works from 8 a.m. until 3 a.m. And the first thing we did was let's stop having caffeine at 1 a.m. And like, if I was like, okay, let's optimize your training. Like it's just the last fucking thing that matters. And it's just about seeing the context of the individual. Mm-hmm. It's like Mackenzie Baker's idea of client-centered coaching. It's like, you need to understand where the person's actually at before you make any kind of changes, any kind of assumptions. It's really interesting how many ways that we can get better as professionals, though. It's like the moment you move to client-centered coaching, the possibilities are basically unlimited because you don't have to shoehorn your methodology into the person. You have to take the person and view it through your lens because you're always going to be a little biased, but you can be pretty open-minded. You see the person, get all their context, get all the rationale, everything, and try and learn as much about them as possible. And it's like, what are their main problems? And then how do you solve those problems for them? How do you help them see it differently or give them a tool or something that just saves them 2 hours a week? Like maybe that's the thing to optimize. But obviously it depends on the person. Some people just want to be the hypertrophy nerd client, and I love those people. I still have clients like that, and we'll jam about hypertrophy all day. But most people, they don't need to be optimal when it comes to training. And like if optimal means training 6 days a week for 2 hours, I don't know if that's optimal.
No, not at all. I mean, there's too many other factors to consider. But yeah, I mean, we covered a lot today, but I think it's just an exciting time. I mean, we have like on top of the fact that our profession is maturing, just from a purely chronological perspective, and then hopefully from like our responsibilities perspective. But we have social media. We have just so many unknown variables that are impacting how the trajectory of our profession, that it's just exciting that we're experiencing it. It's interesting. It's going to be hopefully a net positive for the industry, net positive for the people that interact with it. But at the very least, it's going to be an interesting story to watch. It's going to be cool to see it evolve. But James, thanks very much for joining me today, man. I think we're definitely going to have to do, like we said, a hypertrophy focus, a little bit of physiology nerding out at some point. But is there anywhere that you wanted to send people, or would you like for us to link to?
Best place is probably my Instagram, James_Walsham. I probably post the most consistently over there. Or my podcast, Health Science Explained.